The studio was unusually quiet. Dr. Phil sat in his chair, hands folded, eyes locked on the elderly man across from him. The grandfather's shoulders were slightly hunched, his hands trembling as they rested on a worn cane. Deep lines crossed his face, the kind that only come from decades of worry, sleepless nights, and unanswered prayers. The audience had already heard the basics. A son had gone missing. No calls, no body, no closure. For 27 years. Dr. Phil cleared his throat. "You've been looking for your son for almost 3 decades, he said carefully. "And today, you say you're finally ready to tell the truth." The old man nodded slowly. "Before we go there," Dr. Phil continued, "I have to ask, why now?" The grandfather inhaled deeply, as if preparing to pull something heavy from his chest. "Because I don't have much time left," he said quietly. "And he deserves the truth, even if it makes me the villain." The audience shifted in their seats. Dr. Phil paused. His eyebrows tightened. That wasn't an answer he heard often. "This isn't easy for you," Dr. Phil said. "No," the man whispered. "But it's necessary." A large screen behind them displayed a photograph, a young man in his early 20s, smiling confidently into the camera. Full of life, full of plans. "That was my son," the grandfather said, his voice cracking. "The last photo taken before he disappeared." Dr. Phil leaned forward. "What happened the night he vanished?" The man's fingers clenched around the cane. His jaw tightened. "I told the police he went out and never came back," he said. "That's what everyone believes." Dr. Phil waited. "So that wasn't the truth?" he asked. The grandfather looked up. For the first time, his eyes met Dr. Phil's directly. "No," he said. A gasp rippled through the audience. Dr. Phil's expression changed instantly, the calm professionalism replaced by something raw and alert. "What do you mean, no?" Dr. Phil asked. The old man swallowed hard. His lips quivered. "Because the truth is," he began. Then he stopped. Silence filled the studio. Dr. Phil didn't blink. And in that moment, everyone watching could feel it. Whatever this man was about to say would change everything they thought they knew about a missing son and the grandfather who had spent a lifetime looking for him. The silence after the grandfather's last words felt heavier than anything spoken so far. Dr. Phil studied the old man carefully. Years of experience told him one thing clearly. This wasn't confusion, and it wasn't exaggeration. This was a man standing at the edge of a truth he had spent decades running from. "You just said the story you gave police wasn't true," Dr. Phil said calmly. "So let's slow this down. What did you tell them that night?" The grandfather's eyes dropped to the floor. "I told them my son stormed out after an argument," he said. "I said he was angry that he needed space." Dr. Phil nodded. "And everyone believed that?" "Yes," the man replied. "Because it sounded believable. Young men leave. Sometimes they don't come back." The audience murmured softly. "But," Dr. Phil pressed, "that wasn't what really happened." The old man shook his head. "No." He rubbed his palms together nervously, as if trying to erase a memory. "That night," he continued, "my son didn't leave angry. He left scared." Dr. Phil's eyes narrowed. "Scared of what?" The grandfather hesitated. His breathing became shallow. "Of me." A wave of tension swept through the room. Dr. Phil sat back slightly, measuring his response. "That's a serious statement," he said. "What would make your own son afraid of you?" The man swallowed hard. "Because I wasn't a good father," he admitted. "I was strict, controlling. I believed discipline mattered more than listening." The screen behind them changed again, now showing an old family photo. The son stood stiffly beside his parents, smile tight, eyes distant. "This was taken 2 weeks before he disappeared," the grandfather said quietly. "We argued constantly. About his job, his friends, the life he wanted." Dr. Phil nodded. "And on the last night." The man closed his eyes. "We had the worst argument of all." The studio fell completely silent. "He told me he was leaving for good," the grandfather said. "Not for a walk, not to cool off. Leaving his life and me." Dr. Phil leaned forward. "And how did you react?" The man's voice cracked. "I said things no father should ever say to his son." The audience collectively inhaled. "I told him he was a disappointment," the grandfather continued. "That he'd never survive on his own. That without me, he was nothing." Dr. Phil's jaw tightened. And then, he asked softly. I told him not to come back, the man whispered. I meant it in anger, but I said it. A hush fell over the room. Dr. Phil paused for a moment, letting the weight of that sentence land. You pushed him away, he said. Yes, the grandfather admitted. And when he walked out, I assumed he'd crawl back in a few days. He shook his head slowly, but he never did. Dr. Phil exhaled. So when police asked questions, you framed it as a runaway situation. Yes, the man said, because admitting the truth would mean admitting I helped cause his disappearance. The audience shifted uneasily. Do you think the grandfather was protecting himself or hiding a deeper truth? Comment below and tell us where you're watching from, your country and city. Dr. Phil turned back to the grandfather. But here's what I don't understand, he said. If this was just an argument gone too far, why wait 27 years to correct the story? The man's face darkened. Because, he said slowly, that wasn't the only lie I told the police. Dr. Phil froze. There's more, he asked. The grandfather nodded. When my son left that night, he continued, he didn't go alone. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Dr. Phil raised an eyebrow. Who was with him? The old man's hands trembled. Someone I never mentioned, he said. Dr. Phil leaned in. Why not? Because if I told them that name, the grandfather whispered, they would have asked the one question I couldn't answer. Dr. Phil's voice dropped. Which was? The grandfather lifted his head, eyes glistening. What happened after my son walked out that door? The audience gasped. Dr. Phil said nothing, and that silence spoke louder than words. Because now it was clear, this wasn't just a story about a missing son. It was a story about a truth deliberately buried, and a man who could no longer live with what he'd done. And everyone in the room knew it. Whatever came next would be far worse than an argument. The studio was silent, almost unbearably so. The grandfather's confession had left a heavy shadow across the room. For 27 years, he had carried a burden that not only altered his life, but had defined the absence of his son. Dr. Phil leaned forward in his chair, eyes locked on the elderly man. You said someone else was with him that night, he said slowly. Who was it? The grandfather swallowed hard. His fingers gripped his cane so tightly that knuckles whitened. It wasn't supposed to happen, he whispered. I never intended for anyone else to get involved. But I did. The audience leaned forward. Phones were raised, some recording, some streaming live. The energy in the room was electric, filled with anticipation and tension. Dr. Phil's voice softened, pulling at both the grandfather and the audience. It's okay. Take your time. Just tell me what happened. The grandfather's eyes glazed with memory. It was my fault. I argued with him. But he didn't deserve what came next. He paused, trembling. His voice broke as he continued. I called someone I shouldn't have, someone who I thought could teach him a lesson. A collective gasp swept through the studio. Dr. Phil's eyebrows rose in concern, his tone deliberate. You called someone to scare your son? The old man nodded. I didn't know what else to do. I thought it would make him respect me, but it got out of control. I never imagined he would disappear. The audience was now fully engaged. The tension was palpable. People shifted uneasily in their seats, whispering to each other, phones still recording. Some faces were pale, others wide-eyed. The grandfather's weighty secret was unraveling live before millions. Dr. Phil took a deep breath. I need you to tell me everything, step by step. Don't leave anything out. The grandfather nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. That night, after he left, the person I called, they took him. And I lied to the police. I made it look like he ran away. The crowd audibly inhaled, shock written across every face. The cameras zoomed in on the grandfather's trembling hands. He had finally admitted it, the full truth behind the disappearance. Dr. Phil's voice was calm, yet piercing. And you've lived with this secret for 27 years. You've told no one because I was ashamed, the grandfather admitted, tears rolling down his cheeks. I couldn't face the truth. I couldn't face anyone. And I was afraid of what would happen if people knew I was responsible, even indirectly, for my son vanishing. A soft whisper went through the studio. The audience was stunned, some shaking their heads, others murmuring in disbelief. Then Dr. Phil paused and looked directly at the camera. Everyone watching right now, this is the moment where you have to decide. Do you forgive someone for protecting themselves at the cost of truth, or do you hold them accountable? Comment below. Type forgive if you believe in second chances, or accountability if you think he needs to face consequences. The grandfather looked at Dr. Phil, eyes brimming with emotion. I don't want my son to think I abandoned him. I only wanted him to be safe. Dr. Phil nodded slowly. I understand that. But now, it's time for the truth to come out completely. The world needs to know everything. The grandfather's gaze dropped again, and the room held its collective breath. Every detail he revealed was a knife twisting in the hearts of the viewers. Each confession added a layer of guilt, of remorse, of unimaginable tension. And as the cameras rolled, the grandfather finally admitted the part that no one expected, the part that would change everything about the case and the family's perception of the past. The son's disappearance was no longer a simple story of a runaway. It was a story of fear, of bad decisions, and of the consequences of secrets left to fester for decades. The audience was silent for a long moment, processing the weight of what they had just heard. Dr. Phil leaned back, giving them time to absorb it, while the grandfather's face fell into his hands, exhausted and broken. The cameras stayed on, capturing the raw truth, and the viewers at home couldn't look away. Because the moment was not just about the missing son anymore. It was about the cost of lies, the burden of guilt, and the courage it took to finally speak the truth after 27 long years. What would you do if a family secret like this was haunting you for decades? Comment speak if you'd reveal it, or hide if you'd keep it buried. The studio remained tense, the air heavy with anticipation. The grandfather's confession had left a scar across the room. Every word hung like a shadow over the audience. Cameras panned slowly, capturing faces frozen in disbelief. Some were clutching their phones, others leaning forward, unable to look away. Dr. Phil's voice cut through the silence. You've admitted to hiding part of the truth all these years, he said carefully. But there's still more to tell. Who else was involved that night? The grandfather swallowed, gripping his cane tighter. His eyes darted around the studio, as if searching for reassurance from the crowd. It's complicated, he admitted. I didn't think anyone could understand. I didn't think anyone could forgive me. A young man in the audience whispered to his neighbor, barely audible. Could this be the son? But no one else reacted. Everyone was too absorbed in the grandfather's words. Dr. Phil leaned forward, eyes steady. You've carried this secret for decades. Now it's time to be completely honest. Please. Everything. The grandfather took a deep breath. After I called the person after he was taken, I tried to cover it up. I told everyone he had run away. I created stories, lies that grew taller each year. Every call from the police, every inquiry from neighbors. I spun a new thread of deception. The audience murmured quietly. Some shook their heads, others whispered prayers. Dr. Phil remained silent, letting the man speak, his presence commanding yet gentle. I thought, the grandfather continued, his voice shaking, that if I admitted what really happened, it would destroy the family, destroy the community, destroy me. A camera panned over the audience again. One woman's hand flew to her mouth. Another man whispered under his breath. Phones continued to lift, recording every tremor of guilt in the grandfather's voice. Dr. Phil's eyes narrowed slightly. And yet, here you are, he said. You've decided the truth matters more than hiding it. Yes, the man replied, almost inaudibly. I have to. The screen behind them shifted to an old photograph of the missing son, his smile still radiant, his eyes filled with youthful hope. I remember that night, the grandfather whispered. I thought it would be the last time I saw him. And it almost was. Dr. Phil leaned closer. Almost. Yes, the grandfather said. Because someone saw him after that night. And they've kept quiet for years. A ripple ran through the audience. Phones tilted to capture this shocking new detail. The energy in the studio changed. Suspense escalated. Dr. Phil's voice softened, drawing viewers closer. And who is this person? The grandfather hesitated, then shook his head. I can't say yet. Not until they're ready to speak. But what I can say, he paused, voice barely above a whisper, is that my son was never truly lost. Someone has been protecting him all this time. A low gasp went through the studio. The audience leaned forward, some whispering, others holding their breath. Cameras lingered on faces, capturing the disbelief, the hope, the confusion. Dr. Phil's gaze shifted around the room. "This changes everything," he said quietly. "For decades, everyone believed the worst. And now we learn there may have been someone safeguarding him all along." The grandfather nodded, tears welling in his eyes. "I feared the truth would destroy him, but I was wrong. And I need the world to understand that." The tension thickened. The story was no longer just about the missing son or the guilt of a father. It was about protection, secrets, and the fragile line between fear and love. Then, a young crew member whispered something to a producer. The word "recognized" barely escaped the lips of someone in the audience, but it sent a shiver through the room. One person in the back had clearly noticed something, or someone they thought they knew. Dr. Phil caught the subtle shift. His gaze sharpened. "Something tells me we're not the only ones seeing this story unfold tonight," he murmured. The grandfather nodded slightly, eyes wide. "Yes, someone has recognized him. Someone has been waiting for this moment to reveal the truth." The audience leaned forward in unison, sensing the climax approaching. The whispers grew louder, tension mounting. Everyone in the room felt it. The revelation was imminent. Dr. Phil looked directly into the camera. "You at home, watching this, pay attention. What's about to happen will change everything you thought you knew about this family, this disappearance, and the man who has waited 27 years to tell the truth." The grandfather took a shaky breath. The time has come. The truth, it's about to come out. And with that, the studio, the audience, and millions watching around the world held their collective breath. Because the next moment would finally reveal the identity of the missing son, the person who had been hidden in plain sight, and the secret that had shaped decades of lives. The studio was charged with anticipation. Every seat was rigid, every camera focused. The grandfather sat forward, his hands trembling slightly, but there was a new determination in his eyes. After 27 years of hiding the truth, this was his moment, not just to confess, but to reclaim control over the story that had haunted his family. Dr. Phil's voice was calm but firm. "You've admitted to the lies, to the mistakes. Now tell us, what happens next? How do we finally set this right?" The grandfather drew a slow breath. "I have to tell everyone what really happened after he left that night. I have to admit my failures. I have to face the consequences." A hush fell over the audience. Cameras zoomed in. Every viewer at home leaned closer to the screen. I pushed him away in anger," the grandfather admitted, his voice shaking. "I called someone to scare him. I thought it was a small thing, a warning, but it turned into something I couldn't control. And then, I lied about it for decades. I told the police he had run away. I told family, neighbors, friends, everyone. And for 27 years, that lie has consumed me." Dr. Phil nodded slowly. "And the person who helped him?" "Yes," the grandfather whispered. "Someone kept him safe. Someone stayed silent, waiting for the right moment to come forward. And now," his eyes rose, glinting with determination, "it's time for the truth to be known." The crowd shifted uneasily, leaning forward as the tension peaked. The grandfather's voice grew steadier, stronger. "I don't want sympathy," he said. "I don't want excuses. I want accountability. I want the world to see that actions have consequences, even if decades pass. And I want my son to know that I finally told the truth." Dr. Phil's expression changed. He was no longer just a host guiding the conversation. He was witnessing a man reclaim his narrative, facing a lifetime of guilt head-on. "You've held this inside for too long," Dr. Phil said. "And now the world is watching. How do you expect your son, or anyone else, to react?" The grandfather's gaze swept the studio. "I don't know," he admitted. "But I've realized that hiding the truth protects no one. It only hurts those we love the most. And now, I am willing to risk everything to finally make it right." A soft whisper traveled through the audience, almost like a collective intake of breath. Phones were recording. Cameras rolled. Everyone sensed the climax was imminent. Dr. Phil leaned closer, voice firm but empathetic. You've set the stage. You've admitted to the lies, the mistakes, the fear. Now it's time to confront what's been hidden for decades. The truth will come out tonight, and the world will see it. The grandfather nodded. I know. His voice became firmer. For 27 years, I let fear guide my actions. But tonight, I speak not as a man hiding from shame, but as a father willing to face the consequences of his choices. I want to make sure that everyone knows the truth about what happened and why my son is alive today. The audience leaned forward again. Whispers grew louder. Cameras captured every twitch of emotion. Dr. Phil paused, letting the tension linger. And now, the moment everyone has been waiting for. Are you ready to reveal everything? The grandfather took a deep breath, steadying himself. Yes, he said, voice echoing with newfound resolve. The truth is not just about the lies I told. It's about the courage it took for my son to survive, and the courage it took for me to finally tell the world what really happened. A stunned silence fell. For the first time, the weight of decades lifted slightly from his shoulders. He had finally taken control, not with anger, not with fear, but with honesty. Dr. Phil leaned in, eyes locked on the grandfather. And what is the first thing you want your son and the world to hear? The grandfather looked straight at the cameras. I want everyone to understand this. No one should ever be abandoned in fear. No one should ever be silenced by lies. And it is never too late to speak the truth. The consequences of hiding it are far greater than the fear of revealing it. The audience erupted into murmurs. Phones continued rolling. Tears filled some eyes. The tension began to transform into a strange sense of hope. Hope that decades of pain could finally lead to closure. And as Dr. Phil leaned back, giving the grandfather the floor, it was clear the confrontation had ended, but the reveal, the real reveal, was about to begin. The studio was deathly silent. Every eye in the room was fixed on the grandfather, whose hands no longer shook. There was a calm determination in his gaze. He had carried this burden for 27 years, and now the moment had arrived. Dr. Phil's voice was steady, yet carried the weight of the suspense. You've admitted to hiding the truth for decades, he said. But now, the world is watching. Are you ready to reveal everything? The grandfather nodded. I am. He cleared his throat, taking a deep, steadying breath. The person who has been protecting my son all these years is none other than his childhood friend. Someone I trusted, someone who knew the entire story but kept him safe, away from harm. They made sure he could survive, even when I failed as a father. A collective gasp echoed through the studio. Cameras zoomed in on faces, capturing every expression of shock, disbelief, and awe. Phones were lifted to capture the moment, and the whispering grew into a crescendo. Dr. Phil leaned forward. And your son, he's alive? The grandfather's lips quivered as he nodded. He is alive. He's been living quietly, building a life, away from danger. And now, he's ready to come forward. Whispers spread like wildfire across the audience. Someone at the back of the studio murmured, "It's really him. I can't believe it." A hush fell again as the cameras captured every reaction. Dr. Phil's tone softened. So after all these years, the man the world thought was lost is still here. Yes, the grandfather said, voice barely above a whisper. And he has nothing but love in his heart, despite everything. Then, the doors to the studio opened slowly. Every head turned. A young man walked in. The missing son, tall and composed, yet his eyes betrayed the decades of pain he had endured. The audience erupted, some in tears, others in stunned silence. Dr. Phil stood, gesturing for everyone to stay calm. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the moment we've all been waiting for. This is the man, finally returning to the story that belongs to him. The son approached his father slowly. The grandfather's hands trembled as he reached out. For a moment, words failed them both. The cameras captured the raw emotion, decades of separation, regret, fear, and hope, all colliding in one embrace. Then, Dr. Phil spoke directly to the camera. If you're watching this at home, think about what this means. Truth, honesty, and courage can change lives, even after decades. It's never too late to make things right. The grandfather turned slightly to the audience. I was wrong to lie, to hide the truth, to let fear control me. But I've learned that protecting someone doesn't mean keeping secrets. It means being honest, even when it's hard. And I hope my son and others understand that now. The crowd was silent for a beat, then erupted into applause. Tears streamed down faces. Phones continued recording. Social media feeds lit up instantly. What would you do if your family secret came out after decades? Comment truth if you believe honesty heals, or forgive if you think mistakes can be forgiven. Dr. Phil smiled, watching the father and son. The world now sees the courage it took for both of you. And this moment isn't just about closure. It's about hope, reconciliation, and the power of truth. The grandfather pulled his son into another tight embrace. I'm proud of you, he whispered, for surviving, for living, and for forgiving me. The son looked at him, eyes moist. I understand, Dad. I really do. Dr. Phil turned back to the cameras. And for those watching at home, this is more than just a story about a missing son. It's a lesson in courage, in humility, and in the power of speaking the truth, even when it's long overdue. The audience rose, giving a standing ovation. Cameras panned across the crowd, capturing the mix of awe, relief, and emotion. Phones continued streaming. The moment was already going viral online. Comments flooded in from around the world, praising the bravery of the grandfather and the son, sharing hashtags like #FamilyReunion, #TruthRevealed, #NeverTooLate. The grandfather turned to Dr. Phil. Thank you for giving me the courage to finally speak. I don't know if the world will forgive me completely, but at least my son knows the truth now. Dr. Phil nodded. And that, my friends, is all that truly matters. The truth has power. It heals. And sometimes, it can even save lives. As the father and son held each other, the audience and millions watching online felt the weight of decades lift. Proof that honesty and courage, no matter how late, can transform the deepest wounds into hope. The studio had never felt so alive. Cameras continued rolling, capturing every embrace, every tear, every whispered apology between father and son. The audience was on its feet, some wiping tears, others holding phones up to record what they knew would be a historic moment. Dr. Phil leaned forward, his tone calm but filled with gravity. What we've witnessed today is more than a reunion. It's proof that honesty, courage, and accountability can change lives, even after decades of silence. The grandfather and son finally stepped back, holding hands but keeping their eyes on each other. The weight of 27 years of lies and guilt had finally lifted. For the first time, they were free to start over, with the truth finally guiding them. Even as the cameras continued rolling, social media feeds exploded. Clips of the confession, the reveal, and the reunion were shared millions of times within hours. Hashtags like #FamilyReunion, #TruthRevealed, and #NeverTooLate trended across multiple countries. Viewers from the United States, the UK, Canada, Australia, and beyond flooded comment sections, sharing personal stories of forgiveness, family struggles, and the courage it takes to admit mistakes. Dr. Phil addressed the audience at home directly. If you've been hiding a secret, carrying guilt, or afraid of admitting the truth, remember this. The longer you wait, the heavier the burden. Speaking honestly may be terrifying, but it can heal wounds you didn't think could ever mend. The grandfather turned to his son, voice steady but emotional. I don't expect forgiveness from the world, but I hope my actions today show you that I am trying to make amends. I am proud of the man you've become despite my failures. The son smiled softly, his eyes glistening. Dad, I've already forgiven you. And today, seeing the truth come out, I feel free. Finally free from the past. Dr. Phil nodded, capturing the profound moment. For everyone watching, this is what courage looks like. This is what happens when we face our mistakes, when we choose honesty over fear. And this story isn't just about one family. It's a lesson for us all. The audience erupted again, applause filling the studio as the grandfather and son embraced once more. Cameras captured the energy, streaming it live to millions around the world. Clips of the reunion and confession began circulating instantly, with viewers praising the honesty, resilience, and love that had overcome decades of fear and silence. Dr. Phil's closing words carried the moral home. No matter who you are, no matter what you've done, it's never too late to do the right thing. Speaking the truth can save relationships, heal old wounds, and even give someone their life back. Finally, he turned to the camera with a direct call to action. If you believe that honesty, courage, and respect can change lives, type respect in the comments. Share this story with your friends and family. And remember, it's never too late to do the right thing. As the studio lights dimmed and the audience began to leave, the grandfather and son walked side by side, not as a father and a lost boy, but as a father and a man finally reunited with the life he deserved. Outside, the world was already buzzing with the story, proof that the truth, once revealed, cannot be silenced, and that courage and honesty always resonate across hearts, continents, and generations.